ವೀಕ್ಷಕರೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ರೋಟರಿ ಕ್ಲಬ್ ಮಣಿಪಾಲ ಅರ್ಪಿಸುವಂತಹ ವಿಶೇಷ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಸೇವಾ ಸಂಚಯ ರೋಟರಿ ನಿಮಗಾಗಿಗೆ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರನ್ನೂ ಕೂಡ ಆತ್ಮೀಯವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ದೇಶ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿಯನ್ನು ಕಾಣ್ತಿರಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಪಾತ್ರವನ್ನು ವಹಿಸುವಂಥದ್ದು ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಆಗ್ತಿರುವಂತಹ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜೀಸ್ಗಳು. ಈ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜೀಸ್ಗಳನ್ನು ನಾವು ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ, ಈ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜೀಸ್ಗಳು ಇಲ್ಲದೇ ಇದ್ದರೆ ದೇಶದ ಯಾವುದೇ ಫೀಲ್ಡ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅದು ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಫೀಲ್ಡ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಪೋರ್ಟೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಇನ್ಫ್ರಾಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಇದು ಖಂಡಿತವಾಗಿಯೂ ಕೂಡ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಆಗಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗಿರಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಎಲ್ಲದರ ಹಿಂದೆ, ಈ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿಕಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಹಿಂದೆ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪಾತ್ರ ವಹಿಸುವಂಥದ್ದು ಅದು ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್. ಇವತ್ತಿಗೊಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋದಂತಾದರೆ, ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಫೀಲ್ಡಿನ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ, ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಫೀಲ್ಡ್ ಇಷ್ಟು ಮುಂದುವರೆದಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಆದರೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಫೀಲ್ಡ್ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ ಆಗಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ಈ ದೇಶದ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಮೇಲೆ. ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ಸ್ಗಳಿದೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಅಡ್ವಾನ್ಸ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇರ್ತಾ ಇರಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಕಾರಣದಿಂದ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್ಸ್ಗಳು ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ ನೇಷನ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ನ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪಾತ್ರ ವಹಿಸ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಮಗೆಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಗೊತ್ತಿರುವಂತಹ ವಿಚಾರ. ಹಾಗೆ ಈ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್ಸ್ಗಳನ್ನು ರೆಡಿ ಮಾಡುವಂತಹ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ಸ್ಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪಾತ್ರವನ್ನು ವಹಿಸ್ತದೆ. ಇವರನ್ನು ಕೆಪೇಬಲ್ ಮಾಡುವಂತಹ ಕೆಲಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಸದಾ ನಿರತರಾಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಕೂಡ ಅಂಥದ್ದೇ ಒಬ್ಬರು ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್ಸ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ಟೀಚ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವರನ್ನು ಸಮಾಜಕ್ಕೆ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡುವಂತಹ ಒಬ್ಬರು ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರೇ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶ್ರೀಕಾಂತ್ ಪ್ರಭು ಅವರು. ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ MIT ಮಣಿಪಾಲಲ್ಲಿ. ಇವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಅವರದೊಂದು ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್ ಮಾತಾಡುವ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಉಡುಪಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತು ಮಂಗಳೂರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ಗಳನ್ನು ತೋರಿಸ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, IITsಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟನ್ನು ತೋರಿಸ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಹೇಗೆ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಎಜುಕೇಷನ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮನ್ನು ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ಇಂತಹ ವಿಚಾರಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆಯೂ ಕೂಡ ಮಾತಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮೊದಲಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಅವರನ್ನು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಆತ್ಮೀಯವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಸರ್.
ಗುಡ್ ಈವ್ನಿಂಗ್.
ಸೊ ಇವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಪುಟ್ಟದಾಗಿ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಆದರೆ, ಇವರು MTech ಮತ್ತು PhD ಮಾಡಿರೋದು IIT ಖರಗ್ಪುರಲ್ಲಿ. ಅಲ್ಲಿಯ ನಂತರ ಈಗ ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತವಾಗಿ MIT ಮಣಿಪಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವರು 2011ರಲ್ಲಿ ರೋಟರಿ ಕ್ಲಬ್ ಮಣಿಪಾಲವನ್ನು ಸೇರ್ತಾರೆ. 2016ರಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೆಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿಯೂ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಉತ್ತಮವಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಸೇವೆಯನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆಗಿ ರೋಟರಿಯ ಕಾರ್ಯಚಟುವಟಿಕೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ತೊಡಗಿಸಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 2013ರಲ್ಲಿ ಟೋಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಕ್ಲಬ್ ಅನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಸೇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಕೂಡ ವಿವಿಧ ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಮಾತಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು ಬಹಳಷ್ಟಿದೆ. ಆದರೆ ಒಂದು ಹೇಳ್ತೇನೆ, ಇವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಮುಂದೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ ಉತ್ತರಗಳು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತದೆ. Hello sir, very welcome to the show sir.
Thank you.
So
my pleasure.
Let's begin with your education qualification. Like we have heard that you are an IIT and all those things. Can you brief us about your education background sir?
It's my pleasure to be here this evening. My schooling is from Delhi Public School, Bhilai. My father is from the steel industry, late Mr. G.S. Prabhu. And after my schooling from Delhi Public School, Bhilai, my 10th and 12th, I went to Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Puttaparthi, Prashanti Nilayam, Andhra Pradesh, from where I did my 5-year integrated Master of Science, honors in mathematics and specialization in computer science. And then I went on to do my Master of Technology in Computer Science and Data Processing from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. And subsequently I finished my PhD in Retinal Biometric Pattern Analysis System from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. So this is in short my education.
Okay. So you said about IITs, but when it comes to Udupi and Mangalore, there are a lot of less people, they take interest in IITs and all. Even if they take interest, then they won't be securing good ranks in IITs. Right. So what may be the reason behind this, sir? How can this be changed?
Right. If we look at the engineering education of India and how it is perceived in terms of science, society and technology, it is very, very narrowed down. Because all people think technology is engineering, engineering is technology in India. Clinical is medicine, medicine is clinical. That is what is the scenario in India. But it is not so. If you take MIT Boston, they have engineering, they have technology, they have science, they have law, they have medicine, they have commerce, they have got art, anthropology, all put together inside MIT Boston. So first we need to understand what technology is. It's a product, and a product can come from either engineering, which are ideas, or it can come from law, it can come from science, it can come from arts, it can come from any branch of learning. and that is what we call technology as a product. A very important misconception which is there in India, specifically from the IIT perspective, everybody thinks IITs are only for engineering. It's not so. Because today, the oldest IIT, IIT Kharagpur, has got law, it has got medicine, it has got medical science and technology, it has got engineering, it has got arts, it has got English, it has got education technology. You call any branch, it is available there, but linked with technology. Now let me come down to Udupi. 50 to 60 years back, Mangalore and Udupi was one city. And majority of the students from here, let us take the last 70 years, majority of the students from here, whoever went for engineering or medicine, either they went to colleges like VJTI in Bombay, Gindi College in Madras, or some of them came to Manipal, some of them went to KREC, now which is called NITK Surathkal, and later into NITTE, KVG Sulya, and other colleges. Now what has been seen here is Dakshin Kannada undivided was not properly connected to other parts of India, either by rail or road, till lately 10 years back. I can say the connectivity is improved after the Konkan Railway came into picture. But if you see the development, it's world class. And now coming to the point, the students from undivided Dakshin Kannada, whoever went for engineering and even medicine, many of them opted colleges here itself, because the development was more here in terms of infrastructure, in terms of greenery, in terms of gross domestic product. So parents never thought that my child, son or daughter, should go to an IIT or should go to a REC or should go to a All India Institute of Medical Sciences, all the premier institutes. There are two reasons for this. One reason is, if you take the northern parts of India, in my days when I was in North India, development was less. A lot of problems were there, poverty, and I should not say the Naxalite problem. So parents were scared to send their children specifically to eastern parts of India, where all the top engineering and medical colleges were there, including IIT Kharagpur and IIT Kanpur, where there were and there are still lots of Naxalite problems, but now reduced. So parents from here thought, why can't we put our children here itself, and then they will get training and then they will go abroad. So this is one of the main reasons why kids from this region could not make it to the IITs and AIIMS. I can say 25 to 30 years back. There were not many, there were few, and even if they were there, some of the kids, their parents are from Bombay. So that exposure. So the second point is exposure. What exposure you get? Fortunately or unfortunately, as I said, since development here in terms of infrastructure was more, and it is more today also. So when the kids didn't go outside Dakshin Kannada and now Mangalore and Udupi, the exposure became less. Now what do we mean by exposure? Seeing organizations, seeing institutions. According to me, there are very few people here who know about steel plants, about Coal India, about BHEL, could be DRDO, ISRO, and all these organizations. Because all these organizations are all in northern parts of India or eastern parts of Karnataka or in Tamil Nadu or in Kerala. So we were left behind in sorts of thinking about all these organizations. So exposure for the kids in knowing these organizations became less. And the next point, even the coaching classes, because if we see northern parts of India, the quota coaching, or in my days, brilliant tutorials, Agarwal classes, from brilliant tutorials is from Chennai. So all these courses which I referred for the IITs were not accessible in this place, because somehow Madras, which is today called Chennai, the accessibility of Madras, which is called Chennai today, is more towards North India, East India, West India. So we were left out. Kids are very brilliant here. I should say they can make it to Stanford, they can make it to Berkeley, they can make it to MIT Boston, and now they are. Because now parents are also becoming well off, they can afford the education directly to send the kids for engineering abroad. Because what is being seen is, in some of the government institutions, though they are great in India, infrastructure sometimes get diminished.
Yes.
So parents don't want to send their kids to these institutions. So same thing is happening here today, but it was not so 15, 20 years back. So point number one, exposure. Point number two, the accessibility of this place, because of which kids could not see these premier institutes like IITs and AIIMS, even the RECs and others. But now the things are changing, because now the connectivities have improved, like we have got the Konkan Railway, airports have become modernized. So naturally when the connectivities improve, the exposure of the kids to these educational institutions have increased. And we can see now at least 20 to 25 from undivided Dakshin Kannada making it to the premier institutes of the country. Leave alone the foreign institutes. I am talking about the developed countries, say like MIT Boston, Stanford, University of Melbourne, University of New South Wales, ETS Zurich, or Technical University Eindhoven, all these. These are all in the same class. So in a nutshell, if you increase the exposure of the kids and provide them with the best intellectual infrastructure like Coursera, NPTEL, which I call Desi educational material, where you have got law, medicine, technology, and even the others like commerce, general studies, etc., etc. And these are all free lecture notes made by the Human Resource Development Ministry of the Government of India. So we have all these resources today which are directly accessible to the internet, and the kids here now are using them, and I feel starting from class 6 or class 7, the kids should be given an exposure of these materials, because there are lots of K-12 materials available. K-12 means KG1 to class 12 in this NPTEL in a cloud, which these kids can use and make their education more memorable, along with what their teachers have taught. We have the intellectual infrastructure, we have the teachers, we have the professors, including me, we have the medical professionals, etc. But we need to add that exposure parameter more, because we have people now who are from well-off background. So I don't think it is difficult today from undivided Dakshin Kannada, and even if you say Mangalore and Udupi, kids can do better.
Okay, sir, you're teaching in Udupi for more than 2 decades now. You have visited different schools, different colleges. So what do you think, where does our education system stand today, and what we can do to cope up with the outside education system that we are having in India?
Yeah, if you look at the education system in Udupi today, we have got good schools for the K-12 programs. The syllabus is well prepared because they are all Central Board of Secondary Education syllabus, like mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, and different combinations are there, like physics, chemistry, mathematics, along with the physical education, physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology. Physics, chemistry, mathematics, and commerce, and all those possibilities. And we have 2 concepts here, pre-university or schools. So pre-university meaning class 10, class 12, and then going to the university stage in the same college or a different set of schools. And all the schools here also have very good infrastructure. Now what do we mean by infrastructure? We need to understand this point. There are 2 types of infrastructures. One is intellectual infrastructure, another is physical infrastructure. Now what do we have in physical infrastructure? At a macro sense, we have got buses, we have got canteens, we have got buildings, we have got labs. Now at a micro level, what do we have in physical infrastructure? We have got human beings. We have got professors or teachers, then non-teaching staff and others. Now there is a lot of connectivity today between intellectual infrastructure and physical infrastructure. Now when I say intellectual, they are all the teachers. Say like when a student goes to a school, he or she starts with prayer, then they are taken to the class, their periods will start, first period, second period, third period, then they will have break, and then once again. But let me make a point here, this is very monotonous, because this has been there from my days, from the 1980s, 1990s. Same, when I was studying in Delhi Public School, Bhilai, we had physical infrastructure, intellectual infrastructure. And the way things were carried out those days, it is the same today also, because I also studied in Central Board of Secondary Education. So if at all I have to answer this question, today in schools, we have to make all the subjects what the students study more interdisciplinary. Like if a student is studying mathematics, let us teach them what are the applications of mathematics, say like coordinate geometry, trigonometry, or calculus. Where do we apply them? Show them some examples, show them some pictures, show them some toy models. Like if you say trigonometry, show them a tree and how you can view that tree. Show them a house and tell them how this house is made, what kind of rooms we have, why these rooms have been placed in certain locations, what are the distances. That is what coordinate geometry speaks about. So now what are we doing? We are combining the intellectual infrastructure along with practical examples. This I feel somehow is lacking in the schools. This we need to make it more synergic in nature when I say intellectual infrastructure. Now if I come to the physical infrastructure, say a student is taken to the lab, say like computer science lab in the schooling days. First the student should be explained what are the different computers kept here and why are they for, what are those machines, what are their dimensions, what are their compatibilities, and why have they been kept here and why are they using them. So first the student needs to understand, and this is what I feel is lagging somewhere. Like if we have a supercomputer in a school, what is the meaning of a supercomputer? Why are we using them? It could be for defense, it could be for the armed forces, it could be for making steel, it could be for software. And believe me, these are the days when kids, they are open to the internet, they know all these things, but we need to get it out from their brains. So we need to give them exposure in intellectual infrastructure and physical infrastructure. It is not we take them, we teach them something, or we take them to a building and we teach them something. No. We need to tell them the importance of each and every entity. That's what happens in the developed countries. And believe me, these days India is called as a newly industrialized country. We are no more a developing country. So we need to understand, the kids need to understand, the parents need to understand that we are a newly industrialized country or a fast developing country. So when you say that, if a group of kids are there in K-12 in school, make them to understand what are the applications of mathematics, what are the applications of biology. It could go to respiratory medicine, it could go to neurology, neurosurgery, ophthalmology, orthopedics, psychiatry, or it could go to any dimension, allied health sciences, life sciences, and show them pictures. If you say respiratory medicine, how do lungs look like, and what are the applications of COVID-19 with lungs. What usually happens to we teachers is, or to anybody, if you look at a set of K-12 kids, we think whether these people will be able to understand. No. This is what is the risk taking parameter from my side and from the teacher's side, which we need to take, and we are taking it. It's not we are not doing it, we are, but it should come out more from all the teachers including me. Then the students get impressed, they learn things. You come out of say technology and medicine, you come to commerce, you talk to them about forecasting. Like if it is raining heavily, what can happen after 10 years in Udupi? Can a flood come? Can an earthquake come? This is what is called forecasting. For which there are various methods. So tell them in short, what do we mean by futuristic laws? What can happen? So this is what you can tell from commerce, tell them the applications. Or you go to arts, law. If you say law, how technology is applied in law. Suppose say there is a crime case, right? Explain to them, they will understand. You need not have to tell them each and every detail and how you can bring in technology in law to solve a problem. Because when you want to solve any issue, it could be a mathematical problem or it could be a legal problem, wherein there are a set of instances which need to be combined, and then you need to give a logical conclusion. And that is what mathematics is all about. If you take Ramanujan, he died very early, but as a kid he wrote theorems. Why can't our kids do it when they are in school? So we can, but we need to open up. It is basically called taking risks, first from the professors and from the teachers, and when we take those risks, we need to understand that there will be criticism, positive criticisms. Take them at your stride and then go ahead. Don't think that something which is told against are negative criticisms. They are all positive. So include your risks taken along with the positive criticism and make the students to understand the different concepts of say biology or mathematics or physics. If you say physics, if there is a mountain, there is a mass, there is a weight. If you say chemistry, explain to them what is chlorine, where it is used, chloroform. You can do dramas. If you take chloroform, what will happen? You will faint. or you can convert chloroform to anesthesia. So anesthesia comes in medical. So there is a connection between chemistry and medical and clinical, and you can bring in technology. So this is the way we need to make the student's brain to work. Finally, it is a mind-body complex, because the brain is connected with the heart. So how you think, you train your heart. So you want to have good health, make these students to understand what they study, and probably they are doing it, but they can do it more. Yeah.
Yes. So your parents also were engineers.
Yeah.
So how does their life have affected you? How does it inspired you, sir?
Yeah, that's a very good question. My father, late G.S. Prabhu, he studied from VJTI Bombay, mechanical engineering, and he joined a cable company, and he worked there for 1 year in Bombay. Then he was selected in one of the Government of India schemes called as the Indian Steel Training and the Educational Program in the United States. This was sponsored by the Technical Cooperation Mission and the Ford Foundation, and these schemes were formed when the Britishers left India for our engineers to get trained abroad. And this scheme in which my father was selected, the Indian Steel Training in the US, it was for the steel plants, Bhilai, Bokaro, Durgapur and Rourkela. Bhilai is in Chhattisgarh today, erstwhile Madhya Pradesh. Bokaro is in Jharkhand today, erstwhile Bihar. Durgapur is in West Bengal. Rourkela is in Orissa. My father was selected for the Durgapur steel plant. And the training programs in the US, they were actually with two countries, West Germany and UK. West Germany sponsored Rourkela steel plant, UK sponsored Durgapur steel plant, and the erstwhile Soviet Union, they sponsored Bhilai and Bokaro. So the engineers who were sent to the US, including my dad in 1960, they were sent there to be deputed in these two steel plants, Durgapur and Rourkela. And these two steel plants belonged to one of the most dreaded areas of Naxalite problem, the labor problem. So this is quoted in one of the books which my dad got when he was in the board of ministry in the Government of India from 1985 to 1993. So I read it there. And when these engineers were sent there, they were made to do a feasibility study of how they can start these steel plants, whether Durgapur or Rourkela, or even the people who went to the Soviet Union, Bhilai and Bokaro. So when my father went there, they were shown different other countries also, like Canada, UK, Finland, Norway, then West Germany, and even the Soviet Union in 1960 when they came back. Because West Germany, UK and Soviet Union, they were involved in, as I said, these four steel plants. So these engineers were shown all the other countries also. So what I gained from my father's studies in those years, 1960, 61, 62, when John F. Kennedy was the President of the United States, the feasibility study, how you can think of a problem which can be feasible. Don't take a problem which is not feasible. So this can be embedded into the brains of children, say in the schooling days, even from KG till class 12, because I am involved in a K-12 program called as the ASSET program with one company called as Educational Initiatives with Manipal Academy of Higher Education. So I learned this process there, and my father's talents, I could embed them into these kids and even to the engineering students. Later my father went to Soviet Union also in 1977 when he came to Bhilai. So I always tell that my father has got both the Western collaboration and the Eastern collaboration. Because Eastern collaboration is the erstwhile Soviet Union, the Western collaboration is the United States of America. And he went both as a diplomat, that is official gratis, along with other engineers. There were around 115 engineers in 1960 along with him. There were various batches. That was the fifth batch, first batch, second batch, third batch, fourth batch. And believe me, in the batch in which my father went, half of the engineers didn't come back. They settled there only. That provision was there. So now, what logical conclusions I made and I take from his education, apart from feasibility study? Can I connect steel industry with computer science? Because my father was an industrial engineer, and my department from where I passed out in IIT, my PhD, is also from industrial engineering and management. And today it is called as industrial and systems engineering. I'll come to it later. So I could connect, because I work on forensic engineering these days in crimes, then in healthcare. Right? So what do we mean by crimes and healthcare? It is to deal with the industries. Even this building is an industry. engineering college is an industry, a hospital is an industry, a supermarket is an industry. Now you connect them, it becomes industrial engineering. These days what is called as software engineering. Why? Because you want to connect everything by internet. So this is what, so my father's studies in industrial engineering, I caught it in those days which were more manual, and today it is more automated. My father retired in 93. My mother worked in public works department, though for a short time. Then she was involved in lot of yoga activities in the Bihar School of Yoga in Munger. So from my mother's activities in PWD, when this road was made from Mangalore to Kundapur, this highway, in 1960 it was made, the bridges were made. So my mother was involved in that whole construction for around 3 to 4 years. So whenever I go by these roads, I remember, I recall that she was, and she said how these bridges were made, because before the bridges were made, there were ferries. So you have to stop in one side of Mulki, then you have to take a ferry, come to the other side, go to Padbedri. Once again stop, take a ferry, go. Now what do you gauge, or what I gauged from this? See, in my mother's days, or before she finished engineering, she passed out from Bhuma Reddy College of Engineering in Hubli. My father from VJTI. So what I gauged was, before my mother joined PWD, there was no proper road infrastructure, leave alone the rail infrastructure. It used to take, in one of the books I read in 1920s, to go from Mangalore to Kundapur by CPC, it should take 2 days. So after these engineers made these roads, bridges, including my mother who was involved, the transportation became faster. And that is what today we call high performance transportation. There are various other ways. We have got now high performance buses, we have got tire based buses. Tire based buses now are also in metro. Then we have got bullet trains, we have got semi high speed trains, which have all come in India. And these all started, the ignition was given from this place which is called Undivided Dakshin Kannada, which was the ending point of the Grand Trunk Express, which is to start from Peshawar to Delhi to Calcutta to Chennai to Mangalore before independence. So after independence, when these engineers worked, including my mother, she left a piece of note for me that high performance infrastructure will make wonders. And today when I teach the students, K-12 kids or even the engineering students, even I am involved with medical students also in bioinformatics, I keep telling the students, what do we mean by high performance products? What do we mean by high performance mathematics? What do we mean by high performance physics? What do we mean by high performance bridges? What do we mean by high performance sports? Today if we see the cricket matches, they are more automated. The results are more fairer. There are no fouls, etc., etc. So I can impress a set of people with my knowledge which I gathered from my parents. It could be either feasibility study or good infrastructure, or it could be high performance datas. Like I said, a combination of both my father and mother, otherwise I am not there. And that makes more sense. So everybody has got a parental background. Everybody has got, God has given this divine gift that you can take something from father, you can take something from mother, and you can make your styles of telling people, because I am from academia, so I need to impress a set of students or my administrators. So I do that. A person is working in the software industry, the ways will be different. So it goes like that, right?
ವೀಕ್ಷಕರೇ, ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶ್ರೀಕಾಂತ್ ಪ್ರಭು ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ವಿಚಾರಗಳನ್ನು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಹಂಚಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಪುಟ್ಟದೊಂದು ವಿರಾಮ ತಗೊಳ್ಳುವ. ವಿರಾಮದ ನಂತರ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬರೋಣ. ವಿರಾಮದ ಬಳಿಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಆತ್ಮೀಯವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶ್ರೀಕಾಂತ್ ಪ್ರಭು ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಮಾತುಕತೆ ಮುಂದುವರಿಸೋಣ.
Sir, when let's come to your profession. So you're working as a professor of engineering. Today we hear that lakhs of engineers are produced every year in India, and many companies say that they're not worthy of their degree. So how can an engineer be worthy of his degree? What else he should do to be better, sir?
Yeah. So let me go back what I said. If engineering is taught from textbooks, slowly it is changing now in India. Or the schooling education is taught from textbooks without practical applications. Because many a times even the textbooks, even we as professors will not be knowing in what context those textbooks were written. So first we need to understand in what context those textbooks are written. So after I went to IIT, I could refer some of the textbooks written by my professors from their experiences of working in industry and how they accumulated whatever they studied there or whatever they implemented into a textbook. So I could understand those points very clearly. So basically first is we need to understand in what perspective the textbooks are written. So once we understand in what perspective the textbooks are written, we know basically what are the projects were carried out by those professors. So first when we are teaching the engineering students, we need to tell them practically what this textbook is all about. What were the projects which were carried out using this textbook? Say a simple example. If you are teaching a subject called as computer programming, how did computer programming come to picture? Suppose there is a textbook there. So first we need to find out in what context the textbook is written. Say like C programming. Why C programming was written? Why Java programming? Say if you say Java programming, it was mainly written for internet. So how did internet come into existence? Let me make it a point here. Internet came into existence from University of California, Irvine, from a PhD thesis by Roy Fielding Thomas. And then it was Tim Berners-Lee who marketed it to the whole world. So if at all I am teaching that thesis to a set of students in engineering or say in school also, first I need to explain them in what perspective this textbook is written, and that becomes more practical. And believe me, after that you see the attendance in the class will be full because it's more practical in nature. Students understand the base and how things are coming up. Point number one. Point number two, if we make it only textbook oriented learning without telling them the basics of the textbook or how this textbook came into picture, students will not get a clear cut value of what they are studying. They will understand the concepts, but how those concepts are applied. So it becomes more theoretical. So they will become good theorists. Instead of that, add project based learning. Say if you are teaching a subject called as say calculus. So calculus is differential calculus and integral calculus. To a layman, if I need to explain what is integral calculus, if I have a room, what is the area of this room? That is what is integration. If I have to tell to a layman what is differentiation, so I can explain to a layman by saying, if I differentiate any building, can I remove some part of the building or can I add some part of the building so that value additions will be more? So this is what happens in infrastructure. You add or you remove. And this all comes from mathematics. So if you explain examples more practically, say I said programming, I said differential calculus, you take any other subject, you go to clinical, say you take ophthalmology which deals with eyes, because I have worked on ophthalmology from technical perspective. What do you mean by human retina? How do you show a human retina as a layer of the eye? What do we mean by that? What do you mean by sclera? What do we mean by white of the eye? What do we mean by pupil? What do we mean by iris? Because lots of works are being carried out in biometrics using all these parameters, including fingerprints, including faces. So if I say fingerprint to a kid or to an engineering student, they will understand it's a thumb. But after I say something is a fingerprint, I need to tell them where are you going to apply it. You will put it somewhere, you will store it, and then you will try to match it. That people will understand. Show them some practical examples. You can extend these kind of studies on examples to any other branch of clinical studies or engineering studies or technical studies. But the main point is to make the engineers more skilled. They should understand practically what is happening. Practically what is happening in mechanical engineering. If you say mechanical engineering, if you say tribology, where do you apply it? So if there is cholesterol, bad cholesterol being formed in the heart, how will you remove it? So it's logical. If hills are being formed, blood will have less area to flow. Then anybody can understand. So heart blood pressure will increase. So there is a very high chance there will be a heart attack, etc., etc. Now how do we explain it practically? So there are lots of other subjects, finite element method. So this is one subject on which I have worked on in industrial engineering. You go to ergonomics, which is a management based subject. So ergonomics word looks very big. So how do you explain to a layman or to a kid or an engineer? Show them a practical application of a easy chair. How will you design one easy chair so that if a person is having back problem, will get relieved? Or how will you design the chairs in an aeroplane? You have to design in such a way that the people who are sitting or the passengers who are sitting will not get back problems or any other kind of health problems. So this is what we talk in ergonomics. So if I say ergonomics and if I show a textbook, the students will get scared because the word looks very sometimes artificial, but you make it very easy with practical examples. So practical examples will make the students skilled. So they need skills. So in mechanical engineering, they need skills how to make automobiles or how to make aeroplanes. A computer science engineer needs skills for automation. How will they write programs and how will they convert those programs as products? Say like in a bank, the banking softwares, they are all products. They come from a small computer program. Or you go to a hospital, CT scanner, MRI scanner, they are all hardware products. Banks are software. So you can give practical examples. So what we can do as professors or as teachers in schools and colleges, take the students for rounds to schools, to the colleges, and show them all these instruments and make them to understand the practical realities.
Okay. Sir, you attend a lot of sessions speaking about communications and leadership, and you are also a part of Rotary. So can you say how the Rotary helps in an individual to develop communication and leadership skills?
Now, that's a very good question. So now let me go to my basics, because I said we need to start from the base of pyramid. Now what is Rotary? Rotary is all about philanthropy. Now sometimes and many a times there is a wrong misconception that philanthropy is just social service. My view is it is not so. Now social service has got various avenues in Rotary. One is community, second is vocational, third is youth, fourth is international, and the fifth one is club. So there are 5 avenues. So when you say community service, we carry out projects, live projects for the community. Say like the Polio Plus program, or it could be any program for reducing the diseases in one particular place, or it could be peace and conflict resolution programs. So it can be brought in the community services. Second is vocational. Now what do we mean by vocational services? In vocational services we talk about different speakers giving speeches on different vocations, so that kids or students in engineering colleges and other colleges or adults can understand what each vocation means. So community and vocation. So there is a subtle difference. Youth is for people from 18 to 30 years. So there is a Rotary even for 12 to 18 years age, which is called Interact. 18 to 30 is called Rotract. So that comes in youth. Now when I say club service, so like I belong to Rotary Club Manipal, erstwhile called Rotary Club Udupi Manipal. So organizing different weeks programs, depending on themes. We have got different themes for each month, for each week. And last one is international, organizing different international events. Now in Rotary, as I said, philanthropy is not and should not be only till social service. Because if we want more people to come to Rotary, we need to show how each person will gain from Rotary, and that is what happens in my club, Rotary Club Manipal. We have done numerous projects, excellent ones like Gene Expert Machine. We have done artificial limb project. We have done books and dictionaries in education. We have done dialysis machine project. We have done on ophthalmology, eye projects. So many projects on healthcare, infrastructure, etc., etc. Now we need to see all these concepts in a holistic way. Can I bring community in vocational? So what happens if you are doing a community project, say like the Polio Plus program, giving polio drops to a certain set of people? How will vocation come? There should be a person who can speak well, because you will have various customers. Some customers will be able to understand English, some will be able to understand Kannada, some will be in Hindi. So there will be a lot of problems. So we need a very good communicator. So that is where communication comes into picture. So it becomes holistic. So community and vocational we can connect. It becomes interdisciplinary. Now when you are talking about community and vocational, you bring in youth, because we require youth to organize programs. we need kids that is 12 to 18, or we need students from 18 to 30. So Rotaractors and Interactors we bring in. Either you make them along with the Rotary members to conduct a community program, or you make them to help a person in a vocation to give a talk. So I think I feel to make a report of the speech and then explaining to that person who will give the speech what each paragraph means. So this is how what you mean by the holistic approach. So what happens to the youth? Once they connect community with the vocation service, the youth also will get better perception of life. Whatever they have studied, say in their science courses or engineering courses or the medicine courses or the law courses, they can interrelate and correlate along with the community with vocations. Then you bring in the international part. So if you complete community, vocations, youth, right, and remember when they are doing all these things, you make them to attend your club programs. So that there comes the club service. So basically in club service we call people from different vocations once again every week one speech. It could be on politics, it could be on army, it could be on ophthalmology, it could be on tribology, it could be on anything depending on the theme. If it is peace and conflict, call somebody from the army. So basically when you bring in international, now we have become national heroes if you look at these four. So when we bring the international services, we can make all the people, it is not only the youth, we can make the middle-aged people, we can make the elders to understand what are the opportunities available in terms of university collaborations, in terms of industrial collaborations. Suppose one of the elders has a project to be carried out in Rotary, say in my club or any other club, right, say in my district or in my zone. So a group of people, say if we have gone abroad for Rotary international conventions or any conventions we have attended here, so we can make an amalgamation from one part to another part and help the people who can't see those opportunities directly. So creating opportunities, that itself is social service. So I started by saying Rotary is not only about social service, that is just an assumption. Rotary is about social service, but to create opportunities. So when you create opportunities, we can see the poverty levels will come down. When all of us are happy, the group of people who are connected with us will be happy, and it grows recursively. No. So when you say Rotary, it should be social service to create opportunities, and this is happening, and this has to happen more. Include more number of people, bring more human beings into the picture, and make it a vibrant concept which can make life more wonderful. It happens in other social service organizations also. I am not to claim anything there, but this should be the way.
Okay. Sir, you are also a member of Toastmaster Club. So what exactly is it? What works takes place there?
Yeah. Now, Toastmasters Club is about communication. So let me connect Rotary and Toastmasters here. So communication has two parts. One is communication itself, second is leadership. Now, how do we communicate to a set of people? It could be small children, it could be kids going to school, it could be adults going to colleges, or it could be adults after college was settled, and then elders. So communication has got three parts, right? One is you prepare something and you talk. The second is you have been given a topic on the spot, so you think and talk. So first one, the prepared speeches, I call it to be communication. The second, when you have to think and talk, it is called the thinking part. So communication, thinking. The third part in Toastmasters is listening. Now what do we mean by listening? Say I am evaluating somebody, or you evaluate me. So you are listening to me and then you evaluate. Or the kind of questions what you have asked, I evaluate whether you have asked the right questions to me or the wrong questions. Whether I have given proper smiles, my tooth or teeth was seen. So all these things basically. So these three are the main components: communication, thinking, and listening, which happens everywhere. You board a bus, you go on a bus, you go in a train, or you go to your house, speak to your spouse, speak to your parents, anywhere. Either it will be prepared communication, or in the house your spouse asks some question, then you have to think and you give an answer, so it becomes thinking, and then evaluation happens. Say if you have given the correct answer, the spouse will say okay, otherwise there will be small arguments. Evaluation. So these three components are the main components in Toastmasters. Now if you take these three concepts outside, say in engineering or technology, say a student has been asked to write a research paper and he has been given say 1 week time, so he needs to communicate on the paper. Okay, Now, suppose a student has been asked, say on the spot, the 15 minutes is given and he needs to draft one article and then talk. So, this can become thinking, because he needs to think fast and then he needs to talk. Now, the third case can be a student has been asked to evaluate somebody's speech. Somebody is giving a speech and the student has to tell whether it is good or bad. So, it becomes evaluation. So, basically communication, thinking and listening, it comes in every field of life, engineering, clinical, because even when you are talking to a patient, a doctor, an ophthalmologist, orthopedician, neurologist, neurosurgeon, urologist, anybody, or a gynecologist, anybody. So, first the doctor needs to listen to the patient, so it becomes listening. Then the doctor evaluates the patient, so it becomes listening. Once it is done, then there is a communication. Doctor will tell the patient how good the patient is, how severe the problem is, then the medicines are given. So basically what happens, communication and evaluation. Then the patient suddenly will ask certain questions. Suddenly, doctor might not have an answer, so doctor needs to think. So communication, thinking and listening. So this is from the clinical perspective. Now even if you go to a software industry, there is a product being made and there is a team, a project leader, project manager, software engineer. A set of software engineers have made a product and now they are demonstrating it before their administrators. So what happens when you are demonstrating a product? You will get a lot of questions basically. That means those software engineers are being evaluated. So when they are being evaluated, after they are being evaluated, they need to communicate, right, for whatever questions have been asked. So they communicate, these software engineers. Now suddenly somebody from the administrator will ask a question. Now the software engineers need to think. Some of the questions they will have answers directly, that becomes communication. Some of the questions they will not have answers directly, so that becomes thinking. And listening will go both sides, because they will be evaluated by the administrators, right, and even the software engineers will evaluate the administrators. Both ways it will go. So according to me, Toastmasters is an organization which is applied in day-to-day life. Wherever you go to a beach, you travel in a plane, you go to Mars, anywhere. Communication, thinking, listening, if you don't have, or if you are not a good communicator, if you are not a good thinker, or if you are not a good listener, then you cannot take criticisms positively. The main thing in life is to take criticisms positively, not negatively. So there are no misconceptions and you go on the right path and you rise up in life. So this is what is Toastmasters all about. You can apply it in Rotary, and we have connections now. Rotary is connected with Toastmasters. Toastmasters is connected with other clubs also, like the IEEE for electrical, electronics, computer science, engineering, because everywhere it is required. So various academic organizations, clinical organizations, even the NGOs, they are tying up with Toastmasters. Now as I said, Toastmasters should not be viewed as giving a speech in a club. It should go outside. Same thing should happen in Rotary. Whatever you do inside a club should go outside. You should be, you as a personality, or I as a personality, should be emulated by somebody else. And that's what becomes empathy. So we are not here to create sympathies, either in the Toastmasters club or in the Rotary club. We need to impress a set of people that when we say anywhere you have social service, how do we see that social service in terms of opportunities? So according to me and according to the logistics, even Toastmasters is about creating opportunities. You can create more skills. So the questions whatever you have asked, the answer is there in every answer of mine. So it's very recursive. So that's my point.
Okay. Sir, you have spoken about a lot of things right in this show right now. So a lot of viewers are saying, how would you like to summarize everything that you have said till now, sir?
My logical summaries will go in a set of points. Point number one, we need to take good points from our parental background. As I said, everybody has good parental background. Take from them something. Then when we go to a school, as a kid and an adult, emulate those principles of our parents. And those are what we call human values. Now, human values does not mean becoming a sadhu. Once again, I reiterate, human values is or are to create opportunities. Point number two, if you take the schooling education and the higher education, engineering, clinical, legal, we need to become holistic. Because as we see in the COVID-19 times, we have got shortage of professionals, medical professionals. So we need to create more number of registered medical practitioners. So can a technologist become a clinical doctor? This is what happens in the developed countries. Temporarily. Or can we make somebody as a nurse, either a male or a female, so that we have got more number of people attending to the patients? So during pandemic times, we need more human resources, human resource management. So can we amalgate engineering, technology, medicine, law together? Because sometimes we might require lawyers. Point number 3. If we have a collection of holistic approaches, can we create more skills? Now, why do we require skills? Because first is we need to remove the extreme poverty. How will you remove extreme poverty? Once again, create opportunities, create skilled labor. So it should not be only an engineering graduate can go somewhere or a basic science graduate can go somewhere. So if a person has a qualification, he or she should have something to work on. So parental background, holistic approach in all the different concepts of life, and third is creating opportunities for the skills. It is not that we are creating skills, but opportunities for skills. The last one, a message for all. We need to see our city, Udupi, becoming a developed city, because the human development index is very high already. We should not see anybody going hungry. We should not see anybody not having a job. We should see everybody happy. A good family life. Then if Udupi becomes happy, the undivided Dakshin Kannada will also become happy, because the other side also will have competition. So once this thing happens, the whole Karnataka will become happy. When whole Karnataka becomes happy, the whole nation, because everybody will compete with each other to see that we have got good parental background, good engineering or good clinical or anything background, or good skills with opportunities. So naturally, when the whole country becomes rich, the human development index goes high, the gross domestic product, what we call in terms of purchase power and per capita, that also goes high. The whole world then will get, the South Asia, Asia, Eurasia, Europe, Australasia, and the whole world will become happy. And these are the words of the late John F. Kennedy, the president of the US. He said, now this is the reverse way of looking at it. When the engineers went there, he said, first you are the citizens of India, China, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and other third world countries, because that time there were first world and second world countries. First world where and are today what are developed countries, and second world Soviet Union and China. And then you are the citizens of the whole world. So first he said you belong to your country, and then you are citizens of the whole world. Now I am reversing the trend. I am saying my place becomes happy, Karnataka becomes happy, India becomes happy, the whole continent becomes happy, the whole world becomes happy. And this is what is social service all about. You call it Rotary, you call it Lions, you call any organization. If people are happy, if the GDP is high for all the nations, the whole world goes in a fantastic way. So this is all human life is all about, and human values all about, and this is what I call EduCare, EDUCARE. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. You have shared a lot of information with us. Thank you for that, sir.
Thank you.
ವೀಕ್ಷಕರೇ, ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟೊತ್ತು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶ್ರೀಕಾಂತ್ ಪ್ರಭು ಅವರಿದ್ದರು. ಅದ್ಭುತವಾಗಿ ಅವರಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ವಿಚಾರಗಳನ್ನು ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಪಡಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಎಜುಕೇಷನ್ನಿಂದ ಹಿಡಿದು ಹೇಗೆ ನಾವೊಂದು ನೇಷನ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ನ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬರು ಕೂಡ ಭಾಗಿಯಾಗಬಹುದು ಎಂಬ ವಿಚಾರದ ಬಗ್ಗೆಯೂ ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಹಂಚಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಮುಗಿಸುವಂತಹ ಸಮಯ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಮುಂದಿನ ವಾರ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬರು ಅತಿಥಿ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಸೇರಿಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಭೇಟಿಯಾಗೋಣ. ಅಲ್ಲಿಯ ತನಕ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.